Hello and welcome to The Explainer. You know, some events in our past are just so huge, so harrowing, that we feel like we have to remember them. But how do we actually do that? How do we process and pass on the memory of history? Well, that's what we're going to dive into together. So this is our big question. To try and answer it, we're going to look at a few things. We'll see how really personal stories can become these iconic pieces of art. Then we'll uncover some hidden histories of courage that kind of defy what you'd expect. And finally, we'll grapple with this profound idea that maybe, for all of us, remembering isn't really a choice, but a duty.
All right, first up, stories. It's no secret, we are just wired for narrative. Stories are how we make sense of the world, and they're one of the most powerful tools we have for preserving the memory of human experience, especially when times get really, really tough.
Think about Anne Frank. A lot of us know her story through her original diary, which is this deeply personal account, right? But it was actually a Pulitzer Prize-winning play that dramatized her story for the stage. It's what took her private words and turned them into a kind of public monument, and it shaped how millions of people would come to remember her life in the secret annex.
The play gives us this incredible window into Anne's head, mostly by using her own words. This line right here just perfectly captures her inner struggle, this conflict between the person she feels she is on the outside and the person she really wants to become. Drama just has this way of making that internal conflict visible and, yeah, deeply relatable.
And right here, you can see the real power of drama. It's in the contrast between what's said and what's done. Peter's reaction is all physical. It's angry, it's defiant. But Anne's quiet question, well, it shows a totally different relationship with her own identity. The playwrights use this single moment to show us that the star wasn't just a symbol of oppression. For them, it was a complicated part of who they were.
But of course, stories aren't just preserved in traditional plays or books. You can find a completely different approach to memory in something like a graphic novel. Art Spiegelman's Maus uses the unique power of visual storytelling to pass on his own father's experience of the Holocaust.
The power of Maus really comes from this central visual idea. By drawing Jews as mice and Nazis as cats, Spiegelman instantly creates this visceral feeling of predator and prey. It's not just some artistic choice, it fundamentally shapes how you understand the power imbalance, the terror of being hunted. It just hits you on a gut level.
And when you combine that imagery with the raw testimony of his father, Vladek, the effect is absolutely chilling. This quote just cuts through everything. It's this statement of devastating awareness. They weren't ignorant of their fate, they were trapped by it. And in the graphic novel, that stark reality is just impossible to look away from.
These famous stories are so vital, but they aren't the whole picture. Remembering the past also means we have to uncover the quieter, often overlooked stories of those who resisted, who helped, who chose compassion when it was an unimaginable risk. And that leads us right here, to the helpers. These are the stories of ordinary people who, when they were faced with an extraordinary evil, made the choice to do the right thing.
Now this is one of those incredible, lesser-known histories. At a time when many Parisians were too afraid to help their Jewish neighbors, an entire network of rescuers, including Muslims at the Grand Mosque of Paris, created a lifeline for people on the run.
The mosque's history actually made it the perfect refuge. It was originally built as a symbol of gratitude, but during the occupation, it transformed into a sanctuary. Because it was always a hive of activity, it didn't draw much suspicion, and its underground passages became a vital part of an escape route for hundreds of people, many of them children.
And help came in so many forms. It could mean providing shelter, like what happened in the secret annex or at the mosque. It could be about getting illegal ration books, like Miep Gies did for the Franks. Or it could even mean creating entirely new identities, with helpers coaching fugitives on how to pass as non-Jews to avoid being caught. Every single one was a profound act of resistance.
So why did they do it? What was their motivation? This quote from Mr. Crawler is so powerful because it's so simple. It wasn't about some complex political theory. For so many people, it was a fundamental rejection of cruelty, just a simple declaration of their own humanity.
So all these stories, these hidden histories, they show us how people chose to act. But looking at them, it kind of forces us to ask an even deeper question. Not just how we remember, but why. Why is it a moral imperative?
And perhaps no one has ever articulated this duty to remember more powerfully than the Holocaust survivor and author Elie Wiesel. He argued that memory isn't some passive activity, but an active, moral obligation that we all share.
So, when Elie Wiesel accepted the Nobel Peace Prize, he wasn't just speaking for himself, he was speaking for all survivors. And his speech wasn't just about looking back at the past, it was a call to action for the future, one built on the foundation of memory.
This was his vow. For Wiesel,
Being silent when you see suffering is a betrayal. He argued that neutrality always helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence, he said, encourages the tormentor, never the torment.
For Wiesel, the absolute core of this moral failure is indifference. The real enemy isn't always hate. Sometimes it's just the simple choice to look away. He called indifference the most insidious danger of all, because that's what allows suffering to go on, unchecked.
And this is absolutely crucial. This duty extends far beyond one single historical event. Wiesel argued that the memory of the Holocaust actually creates a universal responsibility for all of us to pay attention to injustice everywhere, whether it's hunger or racism or political persecution.
And this, really, is the ultimate power of memory. It connects us. It transforms individual stories into a shared responsibility. To remember is to accept that our lives are intertwined with all those who suffer and all those who need us to act.
So in the end, there isn't one single easy answer. The stories we tell, the histories we uncover, the duties we accept, they're all part of the challenge. And so the question really remains for all of us. What is the best way to carry the memory of the past, and how can we use it to build a better future? Thank you for exploring this with us.